People in Rafah are now left with only two choices. Either to stay in Rafah, wait for the Israeli invasion to slaughter them, or they can flee back to the north through war zones, and that includes a very high risk of them getting sniped or bombed along the way. And there is literally no third option.
الحرب تخلص.
بدك الحرب تخلص؟ ايش اسمك انتي؟
داليا.
داليا، قديش عمرك؟
3 سنين.
3 سنين؟ وبتعرفي في الحرب بتعرف انه
احنا في وقت حرب. انا بنصحكم انه ديروا بالكم وديروا بالكم على اولادكم. كل واحد اللي بفكر يعمل اشي احنا نوصله، واذا لازم نقتله.
ولا بنسوي اشي ولا بنسوي بشي، احنا قاعدين بدورنا مكيفين حل عنا.
انا بنصحكم انه ديروا بالكم وديروا بالكم على اولادكم. كل واحد اللي بفكر يعمل اشي احنا نوصله.
20 برج أصبحت ركام بعد تدميرها من قبل الجيش الإسرائيلي. يعني بتحكي تقريبا عن كل برج فيه 50 عيلة في 20، احسب أرقام. هاي كلها بلا مأوى وبلا بيت حاليا بعد تدمير منطقة المقوسي من قبل الجيش الإسرائيلي. دمار هائل في المكان، يعني مراكز حكومية تم تدميرها، عيادات، مراكز طبية، مركز الدفاع المدني، كله تم تدميره، ما خلوا أي حاجة في منطقة المقوسي في مكانها. هذا هو جيش الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
הנה על סורק נחתו איזה מחזמר רהיב. אחי, תמיד יש לי את הפחד הקטן הזה שיעוף את זה. הם יורים עוד. חדליה, חדליה. כמה פסטולים? אני לא עושה את המצניח הזה. זה זמן טוב, זה זמן טוב לפסטול.
واخويا ولد اخويا واختي والله اخويا عريس يا الله عريس حرام عليكم ابننا يا اخويا ايوه صغير طفل يا الله طفل بس حسبي الله عليهم اخواني اللي بنطاوم اللي مش قادر متعبين حسوا فينا امتنا الناس امتنا والدي
حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
هاي الثاني.
Can accept living that way? Will the world accept it? So if there is only one state, you would have millions of Palestinians permanently living in segregated enclaves in the middle of the West Bank, with no real political rights, separate legal education and transportation systems, vast income disparities, under a permanent military occupation that deprives them of the most basic freedoms. Separate and unequal is what you would have. And nobody can explain how that works. Would an Israeli accept living that way? Would an American accept living that way? Will the world accept it?
As I said yesterday, our military operation in Rafah, the major military operation in Rafah, should not proceed without a credible plan for ensuring the safety and support of more than 1 million people sheltering there.
مرحبا جماعة كيفكم؟ زي ما شايفين أنا هيني في منطقة رفح قرب الحدود المصرية. هذه المحطة الأخيرة للنزوح عليها. هي الناس قاعدة في الخيام مرزانين.
I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is the greatest threat to world peace, and I think honestly we should take their nuclear weapons away. Maybe we invade Israel because they're a threat to national security. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, we should take their
major from the U.S. recently traveled to Israel, and what he discovered about his ancestry challenged his long-held beliefs.
I will never forget the first time I went to Israel and I stepped off the plane, and the first thing that anyone said to me was, "Welcome home." Every single person who's Jewish that steps off the plane, especially for their first time in Israel, is told welcome home.
So to unravel the mystery behind his background, this guy takes a DNA test. And guess what? Turns out he's 88% Ashkenazi Jewish, tracing his roots all the way back to Eastern Europe. This shakes up the whole idea that being Jewish is all about Israel.
This right here, this is my actual ancestry. I am 88% Ashkenazi Jewish, and none of my ancestors are from the Middle East. The land that is called Israel now is not my home. It's not my ancestors' home. It's Palestinian.
For as long as I live, for as long as I have the privilege of serving in the Senate from New York, I will unflinchingly, unstintingly, and with all of my strength be Shomer Yisrael, a guardian of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, Am Yisrael Chai. In Israel and America, the Jewish nation lives now and forever.
Watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey, she noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy, they didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look.
The Israeli state as it currently exists can no longer be allowed to exist on this planet. I'm no longer a supporter of a two-state solution. I'm a supporter of a one-state solution. That one state is Palestine, the Palestinian state. Jews are welcome to live in that Palestinian state in peace as equal citizens. So let's stop talking about Hamas being a terrorist organization and start recognizing that Israel is the terrorist organization. And the greatest threat to American national security today is the state of Israel. If you take a look at what we're getting prepared to do, for instance, in the Red Sea, we're talking about going to war against the Houthi. All right, now that may seem insignificant, except the following. We can't beat them. We won't beat them. We will lose. Stop burying America in the name of Israel and start looking out for American interests and American interests depend on a stable economy, and you ain't going to get a stable economy if you threaten global energy security by going to war against the Houthi for the crime of saying we won't let shipping into Israel until Israel allows humanitarian goods into Gaza. Understand that's what's at stake here. We're going to go to war because we don't want humanitarian goods to go into Gaza. We're going to war because of that. What kind of despicable cowards are we as a nation, collectively? The blood of every Palestinian is on the hands of every American. And this is why people are like, why are you mad at them? Because they tried to kill the Israeli state as it currently.
The most powerful man in America, because of AIPAC and the pro-Israel lobby, is Benjamin Netanyahu, the disgraced Prime Minister of Israel. He has more control and more sway over the U.S. Congress than the President of the United States or any other elected official in the United States government. It's time we end AIPAC's domination and near total control of our legislative process.
To be an army somewhere that is honourable enough to stop the carnage. I've woken up this morning just now and reading what they're doing to these people. This is wrong. This is wrong. Where are they supposed to go? How can they escape the onslaught?
Ya Allah. Ya Allah.
أنا المزارع خالد بن مش حالف الجبعة مستوطن له أمر تقطيع أنا في الجزر الزيتوني دي.
It's raining. Hundreds of thousands of people are in tents. They don't have any place to go or in the streets. I'm one of them. It's cold, it's windy, it's raining.
And we have to remember another thing, which is that Israel has a particularly extreme government at the moment, and that Israel has talked about the mass displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and I do not think it has given up on wanting to see this happen. First of all, the government of Netanyahu, let's be clear, does not want this war to end. Politically, Netanyahu has a major problem on the day after, because this is when the inquiry will begin as to the failures on the Israeli side that led to and that occurred on October 7th. Secondly,
The Israeli military operation, I think one can say, is not going well.
إحنا استشهدوا كلهم في يوم واحد، يعني في يوم وليلة بطل إلي حدا، عيلته كلها راح، استشهدوا كل حبايبي. أنا حتى ماما كمان استشهدت. المفروض هم يحسوا فينا، يعني يحسوا فينا، يعني الدول العربية كلهم يحسوا فينا. طب يعني احنا أطفال ايش ذنبنا هيك نتعذب؟ ايش ذنبنا؟ فقدنا أحبابنا وفقدنا أهالينا كلهم، ايش ذنبنا هيك نتعذب احنا؟
Fighter on call this a war. Now we're going to have to use a little bit of our common sense. We've all seen one of the world's strongest militaries, backed by the world's strongest military, beat the shit out of these occupied people in Gaza. Right? We've seen their tanks, their weapons, their bombs, their planes, their missiles, all the tech. We've seen it all. Yeah? Have you seen one single armored Palestinian military vehicle? One. Have you seen one? No, you haven't. Would you call a UFC cage fighter on steroids beating the shit out of an unarmed and dehydrated toddler, just beating the shit out of him? Would you call that a fight? Is that what you call it? No, you wouldn't. This is a lot of things. It's not a war. It's not a war. No matter which angle you look at it, it's not a war. You know why I hate it?
There is terrible breaking news in Gaza. Netanyahu is now defying not only the international community, but the United States of America. He is talking about sending in troops to Rafah. Now, Rafah has 1.4 million Gazans there. They have left city after city and are in Rafah. Struggling to get food, struggling for water. The United States is saying, don't do it. The international community is saying, don't do it. Humanitarian agencies are saying, don't do it. But Netanyahu is determined to go into Rafah. That will be a humanitarian catastrophe. We need him to stop, and we need to make sure that he understands the consequences. This is why I'm calling for a permanent ceasefire and a release of all the hostages. There is
1.3 million. Israel said something that should make all of you shudder. It effectively said, I can kill any and every person in Gaza. The 2.3 million people in Gaza are either terrorists or terrorist sympathizers or human shields, and are therefore legitimate targets. Every person, according to Israel, falls into one of these three categories: a child, a journalist, a doctor, a UN staff, a newborn baby in an incubator. And so, according to Israel, it can kill them and then have the audacity to come to this room and tell the world with a straight face, we are acting in accordance with international law. The death of each of the over 11,350 people killed over the past month, be it children, journalists, UN staff, the sick, the elderly, according to Israel, was justified. Think about that for a moment and let...
Even if it were a war between armies, all of these things that Israel has done are still documented war crimes and very grievous violations of international law. And we're talking about direct targeting and assassinations by Israeli snipers of disabled people, of children, medics, press, and medics. Palestine has a right to defend itself. And this isn't even what that is. But if you look at the UN Charter of 1978, they say that, occupied peoples and besieged peoples have the right actually for armed self-defense. And the fact that this is not even what that is, that there's literally people going out there in peace with their bared chests, holding flags, and they're getting killed and sniped. There's so many amputations. I mean, just in 2018 alone, there was 35 kids who were killed. 900 shot.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's children. And even if it...
1967, Israel attacked the U.S. military. What? Killing 34 American crew in international waters. A case of mistaken identity? Or just another ploy between the U.S. and Israel to draw America into yet another forever war? The Liberty was ordered to steer clear of Egyptian waters, but no one told the crew. The captain's request for protection from a naval destroyer had also been denied. Who needs protection? Israel planes ID'd the ship as American, not Egyptian. They attacked anyway, following orders, blasting the ship with torpedoes, bullets, and napalm, and even targeting the lifeboats. Israel came prepared. They jammed the radio, but one brave sailor rigged an antenna and got it functioning, and he made an SOS call. The 6th Fleet was then dispatched, but Washington then recalled the rescue. The only person jailed for this accident was an Israeli fighter pilot who refused to fire on the American ship. Can you say false flag? In 1960, the U.S. military.
Have you asked yourself, imagine what Israelis did before people had cameras on their phones? What the world is seeing now is what Palestinians have known Zionism to be. The question now is that now that you know, what are you going to do about it? Hopefully you want to help us change the world. Now, if you tell someone that there have been 13,000 children killed, and their response is, Israel has a right to defend itself, or Hamas, save your time and energy and move on. Don't engage with them. Don't engage online. Don't engage in the comments. Save your time and energy and move on. Our job is to speak to and activate people that are close to us. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Have you
video. אתה הרגשת את זה? עפו לי השערות, אחי.
I believe that Muslims are more Christian than most Christians. And why do I say that? Number one, a Muslim cannot be a Muslim if they don't believe in Jesus. Period. And when they utter the name of Jesus, or Isa they call him, they immediately say, peace be upon him. Jesus is mentioned throughout the Quran. And the Prophet Muhammad felt closer to Jesus than all of the prophets in history and in the Bible. They believe Jesus was a great man and prophet. They don't believe Jesus was God. Mary, they have a whole chapter in the Quran devoted to Mary and her family, her parents. They believe in the Immaculate Conception. They believe that Jesus is the one that's going to come back, the Messiah. And in the Quran and in their teachings, they talk about Jesus and his miracles, even as a young baby, things that we didn't learn, the miracles as a young baby.
The hospital continues its important functions of treating Gazan patients. We communicate. The IDF is conducting a precise and limited operation inside Nasser Hospital. A key objective, as defined by our military mission, is to ensure that the Nasser Hospital continues its important functions of treating Gazan patients. We communicated this in a number of conversations we had with the hospital staff over the last few days. We emphasized that there is no obligation for patients or staff to evacuate the hospital. Our message to them is clear. We seek no harm to innocent civilians.
طبعا المصريين جايبين مواتير وجايبين كوابل ليمدوا كهرب للناس اللي نازحة جنب الحدود. والله جزاكم الله كل خير، شعب جبار والله. هاي شغل الموتور يا جماعة. طبعا
The United States stands completely isolated globally for supporting Israel in this massacre. And the consequences of that are being felt all over the world in shifting alliances, in economic patterns, in changing geopolitical structures, even in the use of the dollar as currency and many other things. There is a massive, a seismic change of geopolitics underway in which the U.S. has chosen nearly total isolation in the world. And what's happening is the U.S., so contrary to being what Biden in his fantasy thinks that the world looks to the U.S. for leadership, the world looks at the U.S. aghast. The U.S. stands alone with Israel. Of course, the world's even more aghast at what Israel is doing because we haven't had the real-time video feed of mass slaughter quite this way before. Of course, we've had war in our living rooms, on our social media or television.
Senator Jeff Merkley here. I voted to get the emergency supplemental package to the floor of the Senate so we could engage in a process of amendment and debate and consideration. It turned out that no amendments were allowed, and I had to make a decision on the final package. I decided to vote against the package because at this time we have asked Israel to conduct a targeted campaign against Hamas, and instead they have chosen a campaign of shelling and bombing that has wreaked enormous humanitarian catastrophe, with some 28,000 people killed, some 19,000 women and children killed, a huge deprivation of food and water and shelter and medical aid. I could not, in good conscience, vote to send more offensive aid, more bombs and shells to Israel at a time they are conducting the campaign in this manner. It is a manner inconsistent with American values. So I voted no.
مش خبيزة يا حبيبي.
خبيزة.
والله مش خبيزة.
خبيزة هاي هناك.
هذا تلقط.
خبيزة.
خبيزة؟ وين هالخبيزة أشوف؟
هاي.
هذا مش خبيزة يا حبيبي.
خبيزة.
والله مش خبيزة.
خبيزة هاي هناك.
من هذا الشجر ورجيني من وين لقطت، ورجيني. ورجيني من وين لقطت. تعال يلا ورجيني أشوف من وين لقطت. من هذا الشجر؟ انت لقطته. هذا مش خبيزه بالتكلش. هذا انت جعان؟ جعان؟ فيش خبز عندكم؟ ولا ميه؟ بالله جعان؟ احكي الصراحه.
صح.
جعان؟ الله يفرجها يا قلبي. هذه مش خبيزه يا عمرك بالتكلش. افتحها هيك. هادي يا حبيبي مش خبيزة بتتاكلش هادي. انت فكرت كل الشجر خبيزة وكل الشجر اكل؟
من نقليها.
تقلي الشجر؟
يلا
صحة وعافية يا قلبي.
Israel now demands that 1 million people from Gaza, who are now trapped in this tiny place called Rafah, evacuate, and the Western government's response has been hypocritical. While Americans were busy watching the Super Bowl, Israel started bombing Rafah, and they have been using all of their military arsenals. They used fighter jets, artillery shellings, and tanks. These are the exact sort of military arsenals you would use when going to a full-scale war. Remember, these are just innocent civilians. Their homes, livelihoods, and every single thing that's worthy of being called human beings have already been destroyed. Israel first ordered them to move from the north to the southern part of Gaza, claiming that it was the only safe place for them. Not only has the whole world seen that that is a lie, but now Israel is ordering them to evacuate from Rafah. Where would these 1 million people move to? They can't move back to the north, because according to Israel, it's not safe. The question is, if this is not ethnic cleansing, then what is it?
American way. These damn bills that come out, not the American way. These damn bills that come out here all the damn time, come out here at the last second, and I gotta try to figure out how to vote for my people. Now I'm ashamed of you. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I'm sick of it. Every year we give power to one person. It was not made that way in the Constitution. He was around when it was written.
Teenagers, but a few hours after we left, they messaged us asking not to air the interview. And they told us that the Israeli officer in charge of their village had called each one of them individually, threatening that if our interview aired, they would return to jail.
The huge problem that we're facing right now in Gaza is that there are so many kids that have been orphaned. This child was taken in by a Palestinian family because they found him lost and wandering. And when he's asked to say anything about himself, all he knows is his last name, and that the Israeli tanks ran over his father, and that his mother was shot by the Israelis, all in front of his eyes. Imagine asking a 5-year-old who's lost, hey, what do you know about yourself? And all he knows is his last name, that his parents got killed in front of his eyes. I don't know what world we live in that we've allowed the genocide to go on for 90 days, and what's worse is that there are people literally disputing that this is a genocide.
People knew about the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. It was not a secret. You cannot kick out almost 1 million people and the world not knowing. But there was a conscious decision that Israel should be allowed to do it as a compensation for the Holocaust, for anti-Semitism, or as one American diplomat put it, we are allowing a small injustice in order to correct a much bigger injustice. And that's why Israel continued the ethnic cleansing. Until 1967, it expelled 36 villages from inside Israel. During the 67 war, it expelled 300,000 Palestinians. Since 1967 until today, Israel expelled more than 500,000 Palestinians from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And as just before the 7th of October, ethnic cleansing operations were taking place in East Jerusalem, the south of Hebron, and the Jordan Valley. So expelling Palestinians either in small numbers or in large numbers, as is being done now in the Gaza Strip, is part of what Israel thinks is a legitimate arsenal of maintaining the viability of a Jewish state. People knew.
Of course the Palestinians resisted Zionism. Who would not resist someone
I'm coming back to my first story. As long as someone knocks on the window and says, I used to live there 2,000 years ago, it's okay. But if he begins to live in my house, I will try and kick them out. It's a natural right of colonized people to try and kick out the colonialists. That has been done all over the world. And some of what the anti-colonialist movements are doing is quite violent, indeed. That's why the United Nations recognizes the right of indigenous people to defend themselves, even by armed struggle. Now, Israelis don't understand it. Israelis don't know that they colonized Palestine. They really think they came to an empty land and these nasty Palestinians started to attack them. This is not a war between armies. This is a war between colonizers and colonized.
I have so many friends and family who would completely cut me out of their lives because I speak out against Israel's ongoing human rights violations of the Palestinian people. And it's a bit confusing to me because I didn't know about the Hamas attack before October 7th. Israel did. I didn't help fund Hamas for years. Israel did. I didn't approve a music festival next to a concentration camp even though the Israeli military said it was a bad idea. Israel did. I didn't kill some of my own people on October 7th. Israel did. I didn't violently dispossess, occupy, subjugate, rape, murder, dehumanize the Palestinian people for 75 years, so all they knew was hatred for their abusers, and it reflected poorly on Jewish people everywhere. Israel did. I didn't influence American politics and make it so in many states Americans don't have the right to boycott, which should be protected under the First Amendment. Israel did. But somehow I'm the problem because as a Jew, I'm against all those things being done in my name? Guess what? If you are pointing the finger at me or at anyone standing up to the oppression of the Palestinian people and not the perpetrator, the state of Israel, you're the problem. I have
نحن الفرنسيين يعني بيعاملونا زي أهلنا وكل شيء موفر لنا من علاج من راحة نفسية كل شيء تمام.
C'est important pour nous et pour eux ce qu'on peut créer dans l'échange et de remettre de l'humanité dans leur souffrance actuelle.
خيمة؟ خيمتكم كبيرة ولا صغيرة؟
كبيرة على قد أوضة ونص.
أوضة ونص؟ بتبطوها من بلاط القصف هذا ولا الشارع؟ أنت أختها؟
لا هذه مالت أخويا هذه أختي.
كم حجر لميته؟ 13 هدول كلهم إليك؟
اديهم من واحد قاعدة.
هدول كلهم إليك؟ أنت معها حطبلطة؟
لا هذه خيمة غير.
يعني كل واحدة خيمة لحال. وأنت معهم؟
وهذه خيمة لحال وهذه خيمة لحال.
يعني بتاخذوا بلاط القصف
هذه بنت عمي.
ايش اسمك انت؟
سندس.
وانت؟
هذه جنة.
هناك هذه جنة انت جنة؟ كلكم قاعد بتطبطوا هناك؟ وهذا انت ايش اسمك؟ تعالي.
ايش بتعمل يعني؟ ايش بتعمل؟ بدك تجيب حجار؟ ايش بتطلطي؟ تطلطوا خيمتكم؟ كل هدول يلموا بلاط عشان يبلطوا هناك مكان نزوح
İsrail'in mevcudiyetini kabul ettiği nükleer silahlar meselesinin de unutulmasına izin vermeyeceğiz. İsrail'in atom bombası var mı? Var. Ama sorarsan yok diyorlar. Biz bunun ne olduğunu gayet iyi biliyoruz. Ve şu anda Gazze kasabı olan Netanyahu bir savaş suçlusu olmanın ötesinde kesinlikle Gazze kasabı olarak aynen Milosevic nasıl yargılandıysa bu da yargılanacaktır. Farklı hevesler peşinde koşan İsrailli yöneticilere şu gerçeği bir kez daha hatırlatmak istiyorum. Gazze bir Filistin toprağıdır. Gazze Filistinlilerindir. Ebediyen de öyle kalacaktır. Aynı şekilde.
Israel released a list of 300 names that it said were fair game for a hostage prisoner handover because of the truce with Hamas. And I went through all 15 pages of those names. I read each of the individual dates of birth, the dates of arrest, what the nature of the charges were, if there were any charges. Some of them don't even list any actual charges against them. And what I discovered is that of the 300 names, 233 of these prisoners, most of them are teenage boys. Some are there's a teenage girl who's 15 years old. The 233 of 300 have not been convicted of anything. They haven't been sentenced for anything. And Israel is the only country in the so-called developed world that tries children in military courts. And so, you know, the Israeli narrative is that these are all hardened terrorists because Palestinians are not allowed to have any context. Palestinians are not treated as full human beings. So when a child, maybe his brother was killed by the Israeli forces, maybe his mother was killed by the Israeli forces, throws a rock at a soldier, their houses are often then raided at night, they're snatched, they're taken to interrogation without the presence of a parent or a lawyer, and then they're pressured into pleading guilty under threat of spending years in a military judicial process.
News update. The $17 billion blank check to the right-wing government of Israel failed in the House of Representatives yesterday. Thank you for all of your supportive comments on my speech, and thank you for organizing and mobilizing around the country to stand up for so many innocent people who are facing famine and starvation in Gaza, to stand up for a permanent ceasefire and a release of all the hostages. This is a moral challenge of our time, and I'm grateful to people across this country who are standing up. Your actions matter. That's why the bill failed last night. Let's continue the march for peace in that region and justice.
A Palestinian in one of the highest positions that had ever been given at the UN. We said no, and we had him booted out. So then they tested us again, and a ridiculous report, the Falk report, came out. I don't know who the guy is or what he's about, but he's got serious problems. Goes and compares Israel to an apartheid state. So the first thing we do is we call the Secretary General and say, this is absolutely ridiculous. You have to pull it. The Secretary General immediately pulled the report. And then the director has now resigned. The days of Israel bashing are over.
Speaking to the head of the UN, a massive fallout between Israel and the United Nations. The Israeli ambassador to the UN isn't even speaking to the head of the UN, and that's because the head of the UN said this.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum.
The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation.
Yes! Goeie! Yes!
So I just learned that this imperialist lapdog in Egypt, Sisi, this imperialist neo-colonial bootlick of a dictator, is now building an ethnic cleansing prison to finally separate Gazans from their right of return that they earned in 1948's Nakba. If you think even for a second that this expulsion, death, and expropriation wasn't designed as planned the whole time, then you are either ignorant of imperialism's history or complicit in it, or both. And the Arabs. Oh, the Arabs. Arab states, Yemen excluded, have served as concentration camp guards while America and Israel carry out this, their final solution for Gaza. I cannot wait to see what they will do to humanity next after we teach them that they can get away with this.
Sure if you've seen, but vaccines have started entering the Gaza Strip for the children. Yay! At this point, we all know that they're trying to unalive the Palestinians, right? Does anyone else think that it's interesting that we can't get the basic necessities in? Clean water, healthy food, even basic medical care, enough bandages, anesthetics. But the vaccines, they're just rolling in for the better.
على أطفالنا في قطاع غزة وفي غزة الحبيبة فنحن أطفال غزة أغلب المجازر التي شنت فينا هي من الطائرات الأمريكية الغدارة. أمريكا قبل في الحروب التي قد مضت كانت تدعم إسرائيل بالسر، لكن اليوم دعمت إسرائيل بالعلن أمام مرأى العالم كله، وفي عينانا رأينا البضائع والذخائر الأمريكية وهي تدخل إلى إسرائيل، والطائرات الغدارة الحربية الأمريكية وهي تقصف منازلنا وهي تشن الغارات الإسرائيلية على أطفالنا في قطاع غزة وفي غزة الحبيبة.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway.
Why is everybody laughing? What's funny? So this former president lied to his people and to the world, right? Claiming that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and killed over 200,000 Iraqi civilians. More than 300 tons of bombs were dropped on Iraq. Illegal and prohibited bombs were used, causing massive deformities and distortions, surpassing even the effects of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And today, after 20 years, cancer rates among children is 12 times higher. And babies, until this day, are born with life-threatening deformities, lacking vital organs. And you know what? Approximately 150 billion Iraqis' oil money has been stolen since the invasion. Almost every household in Iraq lost someone they love. And you know what? No weapons of mass destruction was found. Hilarious. But you know what? What Russia's doing right now is absolutely terrible.
I've hated Benjamin Netanyahu from day one. My initial dislike of this man came in 1982 when a Marine Corps captain stepped up on a Israeli tank and told him that it could not go across the Marine lines over his dead body. He pulled a pistol and told the lieutenant colonel he'd blow his brains out. The Israelis backed off. We charged the affairs at the embassy in to condemn the Israeli actions. That was Benjamin Netanyahu. His response, to go around and create rumors about this captain saying he was drunk, there was alcohol on his breath. Benjamin Netanyahu is a disgrace. He's a coward. He's been that way ever since. He was prime minister from 1996 to 1999. I was there for 2 years of his prime ministership. He knows what the truth of Iraqi weapons extraction destruction is because I worked with the head of his intelligence and they agreed with me. And yet in 2002, he went before the United States Congress as a private citizen, but with the cachet of being a prime minister saying there is no doubt that Iraq has a nuclear weapons program. He lied. Americans then went into Iraq and died. Benjamin Netanyahu has the blood of thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis on his hands. And now he's the war criminal prime minister of Israel.
That Israel doesn't exist and it's on stolen land. This map is from 1905. Look at that. Palestine. Not Israel. Palestine. A 1922 world map. What does it say? Palestine. 1928. Palestine. 1932 National Geographic World Map. Palestine. 1935 National Geographic World Map. Palestine. 1938 Palestine. 1939 World War II Map. Palestine. 1939 Palestine. 1940 Palestine. 1941 Palestine. Not Israel. 1942 Palestine. 1943 Palestine. 1944 World War II map. Palestine. 1945 Palestine. 1946. What do you see? Israel? No. Palestine. 1947 Palestine. 1948 Palestine. Not Israel. The Palestinians welcomed in the Jews to save them from the Holocaust. And what did they give them in return? A genocide. These maps I'm going to show you are proof that
que haya nunca un Estado palestino tiene que apoyar a Hamas y tiene que transferir dinero a Hamas. Esto es lo que estamos haciendo. Esto es parte de nuestra estrategia. Financiar a Hamas para que nunca haya un Estado palestino. ¿Saben ustedes quién dijo eso? El señor Netanyahu, en marzo del 2019 en la Knesset. Gracias.
Listen to this man explain just what the Israelis are doing, just exactly what is going on. No sugarcoat.
Israel's goal is to erase not only a people, but the idea of Palestine. It is a carbon copy of the massive campaigns of racialized slaughter by other settler colonial projects that believe that indiscriminate and wholesale violence could make the aspirations of an oppressed people whose land they stole go away. And like other perpetrators of genocide, Israel intends to keep it hidden, locking out foreign reporters and photographers, cutting phone and internet service, and it has targeted Palestinian reporters, my colleagues, for assassination, killing over 50. Israel has dropped more than 25,000 tons of explosives on Gaza, nearly the equivalent of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Gaza, by the end of Israel's scorched earth campaign, will be uninhabitable, a tactic the Nazis regularly employed when facing armed resistance, including in the Warsaw Ghetto and later Warsaw itself. Gaza, or at least Gaza as we knew it, will not exist.
Arguing with your uncle about Palestine, Part 1. Check out this common talking point.
I think people are simplifying the conflict. They just want to see an easy good guy and an easy bad guy, and they don't think about the layers and the complexity of this conflict.
So this is a common privileged person's talking point about really maintaining the status quo. Oh, it's complicated. There's no real good guy or bad guy. Everyone's done bad things, and we got to sit down, we got to take our time, and we got to figure it out. We can't do anything crazy. We can't rush anything. It would be morally irresponsible to make quick decisions on anything. It's basically a stalling tactic rooted in the logical fallacy commonly known as whataboutism. So, for example, when Trump, during his candidacy, was ever confronted for any of the things he did, he would just say, well, what about Hillary? What about her email? Reducing 75 years of colonial oppression to October 7th. So people with this talking point are going to try to simplify the narrative when it suits them and then complicate the narrative when it suits them. This stance is disingenuous, manipulative, and requires a high degree of cognitive dissonance. So whenever they're challenged on it, they're going to get increasingly angry. So enjoy your Thanksgiving with old Uncle Bob.
The horrible events of October 7th cannot justify this genocide which is happening right now in Gaza, which is not only not moral, but also not smart, because Israel nowadays is actually creating more and more and more and more people who will do everything possible to revenge. And this circle of revenge must end. And Israel is responsible right now to stop the fire, to bring the hostages, and to look for solution.
I've been an activist for 35 years and I still have some kind of hope, but I think, no, it's very sad. Everything here is very, very sad. Really. Brings me to tears.
This is just a reminder that this is what Gaza looked like before the current assault on Gaza by Israel. This is what it looks like now. And just a reminder that no one indigenous to a land does this to their land. They don't do this. Like, this is not something they do. No Palestinian would do this level of destruction to the land they love and cherish. This is what occupation and colonization look like. And frankly, this is what terrorism looks like.
All the sandwich stuff for the kids' lunch, they don't like turkey anymore.
Yeah, I know.
What about the bananas?
Yeah, I got them too. But, honey,
What?
you're gonna have to put those eggs back.
They don't like eggs anymore?
No, they like eggs, but we have to set that $7 aside for killing Palestinians.
What? I mean, don't we give Israel $4 billion a year anyways?
Yeah, and now we're giving them another $14 billion. Do you know how much that is per American taxpayer?
No.
It's like $85 per person. Apparently it's costing us a lot of money to drop bombs on Gaza.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Don't they get universal health care too?
Yeah, they do. We're paying for that too, probably. Might as well put the bananas back.
Why the do we have to pay for all of this?
Don't cuss at me.
I'm Cenk Uygur and I approve this message. Let's save lives.